Hello and welcome to the Centre for Creative Health's In Conversation series. As part of the Hospital Research Foundation Group, CCH works to improve the quality and experience of healthcare through art, music and design across a number of South Australian hospitals. This series highlights members of the community who assist CCH in presenting our arts and health programs and allows us to focus on some of the amazing work these professionals do. My name is Steph Cibich and today we're speaking with Lou Gannon. Hello, Lou.
Hello, Steph.
So we might just jump straight into it, if that's okay. How would you best describe your role as a diversional artist?
Okay. Well, I basically facilitate mostly art groups, sometimes one-on-one sessions.
Mm-hmm.
So I set up a safe, relaxing space for people, usually in mental health wards, to come along and be part of a group of creatives for a little while. So gives people an opportunity to try something new in a fun way, with no great expectations other than to join in and find something, pleasant to do for a while, because it can get quite trying being confined to wards in a hospital. Sometimes people can't even go outside, so usually I'll set up some music for the background, create a little bit of a nice atmosphere, and then I'll have a variety of materials that people can choose from and go ahead and make some art. So I basically have a visual art background, so I can support people with trying drawing or painting,
Right.
or clay work or mono printing. There's a number of things that I can introduce to people. Yeah.
Wow. So it's quite diverse.
It's very diverse. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. As far as as far as opportunities to try different sort of forms of art making go.
Yeah. Good. That's great. And so how did you find yourself in this role? How you mentioned that you had a background as a visual artist. How did you get started, really?
Well, prior to working for the Centre for Creative Health, I was working as an art tutor in psychosocial rehabilitation centres. So I would go to various centres and offer a similar kind of service. So basically facilitating art groups. And while I was doing that, I was approached to actually create a project at the old Royal Adelaide Hospital, because some funding had been donated there, and the request was that it would be spent in mental health. So so I started off really more as an artist in residence at the old RA, and worked on a project over several months actually. So it meant, this particular project meant that lots of consumers could come in and contribute to the project and do something a little bit different. So it really started off as I say, an artist in residence role. And after that project was complete, I was invited to continue in the role that I have now.
Oh, yeah. Great. Wow. And how long ago was that, did you say?
2016.
Wow. Okay. So you've been there for a while.
Yeah.
That's good.
I have. Yeah. Happily.
Of course. Yeah. And I guess, how would you describe or how does your role differ really from the work of, say, an art therapist, diversional artist versus art therapy? I'm sure there's some crossover, but how do they differ?
They are. I think the main way to describe the difference is that diversional art uses art making as a therapeutic tool, but without exploring or delving into psychological issues, whereas an art therapist will usually work with people longer term, build up a sense of trust, and work through psychological issues, either by identifying them or they've already been identified, and an art therapist will support the person to find ways to work through those. Whereas my role is more supporting, because it's mainly in mental health. It's not always, but mainly. So it's giving people an opportunity to take a bit of time out from what might be bothering them.
Yeah.
So once they're engaged in a creative activity, they tend to relax a bit. They can try something new. They might discover something that they can take home with them that will support their self-care once they go home. It's also an opportunity to raise self-esteem, and actually also relearn how to socialise, because some people in those groups have become very isolated.
Yeah.
So it plays a number of roles, but it doesn't take on, the direct sort of psychological type of service.
Yeah, still quite different.
Yeah.
So you've mentioned some of the benefits for patients, which obviously would be quite broad, and I imagine that they would differ depending on the patient's needs and abilities.
Yes.
But what would you say are some of the challenges that may arise when you're working in an acute hospital setting in your role? What are some of the main challenges you face?
Okay. Because I am largely working with groups of people, and that can vary between a group of 3 to 6 or 7, or sometimes, well, probably 8 or to 10 would be a maximum.
Wow.
But the groups will be made up of people who are in various stages of recovery.
Right.
So some people may be new to the ward, some people may have been there for a while, some people have just had, or they're adjusting to new medications. So what it means is you'll have a variety of both behaviours and moods. So so the challenge might be, some personalities might be a bit more dominant than others. Some people might need to be drawn out a little bit. So I find myself sort of going from person to person quite often. To make sure we get some sort of balance in the group, so that everyone feels comfortable. So,
it sounds quite tailored, like you're having to work with obviously different personalities and different needs, and constantly having to probably think on your feet, I imagine.
Absolutely. That is the key.
Well, good. And in 2019, I believe you facilitated a mural at the Queen Elizabeth Hospital in Woodville. Could you perhaps tell us a little bit about that project and how it all started and what it means to you?
Yeah, absolutely. So it started really from staff on the Crammond ward. Where the mural is, it's an internal courtyard.
Right.
And there had been a mural in this space previously, but I think it had never been finished, and it had been there for a long time, and it was a bit tired. And so the staff really were hoping that we could create something new and fresh and involve the consumers in the process, so that they'd end up with something interesting, pleasant to look at. The dining area faces that courtyard, so that's how it started. And to actually get to the point of making the mural, I spent some weeks in the art groups with the consumers there, talking about the mural, asking questions of what sort of images, if they had a choice, what they would like.
Yeah.
And that's a bit like asking how long is a piece of string. I realised after a while. Yeah,
wow.
Because after a while, everyone had a different perspective.
Sure. Yeah.
So eventually I realised that the main request was to have something like a view, because on that particular ward, you don't have many, or not any, I don't think, outward looking views. So from there, I also had to choose something that wasn't too busy, that would be too unrelaxing, if you like.
Yep.
But that would still have some interest. So eventually I combined the idea of a view with some iconic images of Adelaide, and tried to make it more specific to the West.
Great.
So it was a very large wall space, which I also had to make sure was accessible for consumers. So I couldn't make it too tall.
Yep.
And I couldn't make it too overwhelming, so it had to be achievable with some support. So I basically decided to create something that would be a starter, if you like. So it's still quite large, but it doesn't take up the whole wall.
Yeah.
And there's still plenty of space to add different elements further down the track.
Okay.
So
it's a very collaborative, very adaptable.
Definitely, because I did have to. Well, I wanted as many people as possible to join in, and keeping in mind that some people had no skills, no experience, and others might have, quite significant skills.
Sure.
So had to accommodate that, and which we did, and also accommodate the weather.
Yep.
Because
beauty of being outside.
Well, it was outside, but it also ended up being in probably the hottest part of the year.
Oh my gosh!
And the wall that we were working on got the direct afternoon sun.
Oh.
So
Okay.
anyway, we managed. We managed. So it's done to a certain point, but it can still be added to.
Great. And what's the response been to that mural? From the public and from patients and staff? What's the feedback?
Generally speaking, the feedback is very positive.
Oh, good.
Of course, everyone has their own opinion again. So some of the elements, one of the elements was a pink Holden. And there were lots of comments on the car, and shouldn't it have a number plate, and shouldn't have a particular something on the number plate. So I like that kind of thing, because it means people are getting engaged.
Yes.
They're having their own thoughts about it.
That's so true.
The feedback was really positive, to the point where another ward in mental health at the CALHN have requested something for their ward.
Oh wow!
So
that's great, Lou. That's really great. Well done.
Yeah. So that's with older persons' mental health.
Great.
So I've just started going and visiting them in that ward, and trying to identify the best space to start with.
Wow.
Yeah.
Start it all again.
Pretty positive. Yeah.
Well, that's great. Well done. And so far in 2020, this year now, obviously we've all been faced by a lot of challenges through the recent bushfires and, of course, with COVID-19. Do you think that the role of artists and arts in health primarily has changed in light of these events?
I do. I do, but in a good way.
Yeah.
I think it's strengthened the value of the work of artists in community or artists in health. Yes, I think it's expanded that role, in fact. Yeah.
Definitely. And what about you personally or professionally? How have the restrictions surrounding COVID-19 affected you? And perhaps now that they're starting to ease, how are you finding that you're beginning to move forward?
Good question, Steph. Good questions. Well,
it's a big question.
As we're doing right now, a lot more working in front of a screen.
Yeah.
And that's something I guess I've learned a new appreciation for, which previously would definitely not be my favourite way of working. So my experience has been much more directly working with people. So the restrictions for quite a long period meant finding other ways to, use that time in a practical way. So it's kind of led me to doing more research, which is great. I love research, and practical things. So sometimes for an activity, or quite often for an activity, and perhaps more for older persons in mental health. But we need to actually do the activity before we offer it to other people.
Sure, makes sense.
To make sure it works successfully and, meets the needs.
Yeah.
So practicing activities, looking for more activities, looking at, recent research into arts in health. And so more of that, and gradually now I have been able to resume some work face-to-face, on site, which is great. Still not fully back, and I think because obviously it's hospital settings, much more care needs to be taken with people who are, vulnerable, obviously. So, still not fully back on board, but in the time that I've had at home, it's given me the opportunity also to, I think, walking more in the neighbourhood.
Great.
And taking photos, but with a much more focused view, and completed a painting for someone who
great.
commissioned it quite a while ago.
That's really good. So you've been keeping creative at home as well, in your own time as well. That's great.
Yeah, in my own time. Yeah,
wonderful. That's great. It's and again, I think it's really important to be able to, particularly in these strange times, balance that sense of creativity at home to kind of keep creative, I suppose. My final question is, if you would like, or if you're able to, could you speak briefly about the work of another artist or another community group who is doing positive work at the moment? Something you've seen, perhaps?
I can. I know a woman artist who has been working she's been working across Adelaide. I was going to say in the Onkaparinga area, but she does work quite a bit through Marion Council. But anyway, her name is Monica Pritchard.
Right.
And she specialised in glass when she went through university. But she's moved on to working largely on installation pieces. So you may have come across her artwork in places like Victoria Square when it was fenced off. So she'll do fairly interactive pieces. She decorated the fencing around Victoria Square with, what are they called? The pull, what are those, a name for them?
Like the tiles?
No, not tiles. They're like a foam thing that people use to float. Can't think what they're called.
The big tube things. Do you mean those?
Yeah.
Yes. Oh gosh, what are they called?
I know, it's gone. Anyway, she used those and invited people to help make flowers and shapes and things that were interwoven along the fences. So anyway, at the moment I know she has, during COVID, she has, through the Marion Council, managed to get a Facebook stream, I think it's called, and doing workshops online. So obviously reaching out to the community. She's a very positive, cheerful person.
Wonderful.
She's done lots of interesting things. She's done an installation for the Fringe. She's created giant dinosaur puzzles that can be taken to different venues, and the bones put in a big ball pit so children can jump in, find a puzzle piece, and then make a giant dinosaur. So she's a very resourcul and community-minded
very
artist.
Clever. Wow. Oh, that's great. And those sorts of things that really bring the communities together and create accessible, interesting, engaging projects, and something that people from different ages and backgrounds can really get into and engage with.
That's right.
Brilliant. And something new and something different. That's great.
Yes.
Well, thank you.
Yes.
Yes, thank you, Lou, and thank you for everyone else for joining us today. If you have any questions, or if you're looking for further information about the Centre for Creative Health's programs or our In Conversation series, check out our website and social media platforms. But that's all from us for now. So thank you again, everyone. Thank you, Lou, and bye.
Thank you, Steph. Bye.
See ya.